皆さんこんにちは、大沼あゆみです。私は現在慶應義塾大学に籍を置き、経済学の教授を務めております。主に環境経済学、例えば生物多様性の保全における経済学など、さまざまな環境問題を経済学的な見地から分析し、環境の保全や持続可能な発展のための政策を研究しています。今日はこれからスリランカにお住まいのモハン・ムナシンゲ教授とリモートによる対談を行います。ムナシンゲ教授は今から30年前、世界銀行の環境政策チーフとして環境経済学の観点から気候変動対策に取り組んだほか、2001年からは7年にわたり IPCC、つまりですね、気候変動に関する政府間パネルの副議長を務められました。現在は自ら設立した研究所において環境と経済に関する研究を続けていらっしゃいます。そしてこの度ムナシンゲ教授は第30回ブループラネット賞を受賞されました。これは1992年に朝日ガラス財団が創設した賞で、地球環境を守るために科学的知識の増進や社会変革に力を尽くした方々の功績をたたえて贈られる国際賞です。ムナシンゲ教授の受賞理由は、経済、社会、環境の3つの観点から持続可能な開発を目指すサステノミックスという考え方や、世界生産のほとんどを消費している富裕層に地球への負荷の低減を促すミレニアム消費目標を提唱したことにあります。今日の対談では、そうしたムナシンゲ教授の実用的研究とそれを社会に実践してきた活動について詳しくお聞きしたいと思っています。本来は教授に来日していただき、受賞記念講演をしていただく予定でしたが、昨年に続き新型コロナのパンデミックにより、今年もリモートで先生のお話を聞く形となりました。それではムナシンゲ教授に呼びかけましょう。では最初にサステノミックスについてお聞きしたいと思います。ムナシンゲ教授はサステノミックスという概念を1992年に発表しました。サステノミックスを考えるきっかけになった出来事や背景について教えていただけますでしょうか。
This is a question with deep roots. Let us discuss first the earlier influences that shaped my thinking, and second, the basic problems of global unsustainability, which motivated me. My strongest motivation was the unsustainable status of the world and the major problems encountered by analysts and practitioners in the 1990s to find practical and comprehensive solutions to the multiple complex problems of sustainable development. So I proposed Sustainomics. Eventually, the BIGG approach emerged as a useful mechanism to overcome such problems and nicely complemented the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, it's useful for me to explain the nature of the basic problems humanity faces with a few slides. So the road to Sustainomics and inclusive green growth starts here. Which critical global problems does humanity face? There are many global issues that block sustainable development. There are poverty and inequality, resource shortages, financial sector collapse, pandemics, shocks, conflicts, weak leadership, unsustainable values, climate change, which is worsening all the other issues. These multiple threats are interrelated and synergistic, but our stakeholder interests are divergent. Our responses are uncoordinated, and there is lack of leadership at the top level. We do need a comprehensive strategy. To look at poverty and hunger in 2020, there are 800 million hungry people. Almost 1 in every 9 persons, mainly in Africa and Asia, although China did very well, raising 900 million people out of poverty. If you look at 9 key global resources systems, 4 of them we are exceeding the sustainability limits as a human race. If you look at the summary of key IPCC results, you see now that global warming is proven. Human emissions of greenhouse gases have disturbed the climate system deeply. For the future, continuing climate change will cause great and irreversible harm, mainly to the poor. Fortunately, sustainable development is the best way to limit climate change. If we can make development more sustainable by integrating climate change policies into sustainable development strategy, then we can succeed. Let us now look at the nexus of resource limits, inequity, and poverty. There is a concept called the ecological footprint of humanity, which is the sum total of environmental resources we are using to support human life. In 2012, we needed almost 1.5 planets to sustainably support us. And by 2030, if we continue as we are, we will need almost 2 Earths to sustainably support us. Let us ask who is doing all this consumption. Look at the champagne glass, which shows you the unfair world consumption. 20% of the top leader consumption group in the world, the richest people, consume 85% of the resources. The bottom 20 percentile only consumes 1.4%, and there's a ratio of 60 or 70 to 1. Just imagine 1% of the richest people own more wealth than the remaining 99% of the world's population. 1% of the rich emit 175 times more greenhouse gas per capita than the poorest 10%. And in 2020, after COVID, 2,200 billionaires gained 20% of wealth while millions starved. If we put these 2 facts together, the economic footprint and the unfair consumption, you will see why, when the rich already use more than 1 planet, where are the resources to help the poor? So we have 75 years of unmet goals and broken promises. From 1947, where we started with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a brilliant document. We had the Millennium Development Goals, and now in 2015, the SDG. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 47 included all the basic elements of the 17 SDG today. So in 70 years, we have not made much progress. Now, we have to understand that global sustainable development requires good alignment of all productive assets. If we look at the bio-geophysical resource base at the bottom, it supports the productive economic assets like capital, labor, and land. And then you have the financial aggregates like economic growth rates and the stock market performance. Most of us, with a head in the clouds, we are looking at the financial performance. But our feet must be firmly on the ground. We must understand Mother Nature, and the 3 levels must be very closely aligned for the world to function well. But look at what is happening. First, you have asset bubbles, which separate the financial markets from the productive economic base. Then you have poverty and inequality, which is another ugly bubble, 2 billion poor people almost in the world, and high economic growth rates cannot conceal that truth. And finally, you have environmental externalities like climate change, like the pandemic, which separates the productive economic base from natural resources. So if you can see on the left, the person is quite disconnected. And this is now an enjoy now, pay later model, where a few will get rich quickly, but many innocents will pay a heavy price. If you look at how we have deployed resources to deal with these problems, governments gave bailouts of many trillions to help financial markets, particularly the rich companies in the banks. For aid to help the poor, we spend about 160 billion a year, which is very small compared to the bailouts. And for environment, a few $1 billion for including climate change. So world military expenditures were $2 trillion in 2020. Billionaires, as I said, gained a lot of money during COVID. So with this deployment of resources, how can we solve the problems of the world? If you want to avoid a bad future where unrestrained market forces, conflicts, lack of ethical and moral values will cause more poverty, inequity, pandemics, environmental problems, terrorism, polarization, can easily lead to a breakdown of the global system and a place where rich live in enclaves and the poor will live and die in misery outside. So that is the answer to your question, Professor Onima.
どうもありがとうございます。それでは次にですね、このサステノミクスの構成についてお聞きしたいと思います。Munasinghe教授の提唱されるサステナミクスの非常に重要な特徴というものは、経済と環境だけではなくて社会とも調和しなければならない。つまり経済と環境と社会というものが調和して両立していかなければならないということを提唱されています。でこの、3つの構成要素ですね、経済と社会とそれから環境の調和を実現する上でですね、基本的な原則というのは一体どのようなものなのか、それから実際にどうすればこうしたことというのは実現されるのかということをですね、お聞きしたいと思います。
Thank you again, a very perceptive question. Let me also show you a few more slides to illustrate simply. What are the key concepts to move forward towards a 21st century eco-civilization? We need to address complex, multiple, interlinked issues, and the Sustainomics framework and the balanced, inclusive green growth path were my answers. It was presented in 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit. In the past 30 years, it has been applied worldwide and taught widely. It is open source. Many colleagues have continued to contribute ideas that improve the original framework. The first core concept is called climb the mountain. If you think of sustainable development as a mountain peak, which is covered with clouds, we can't see it, but we can walk up step by step, empowerment, action, and foresight, and eventually we will reach the top. So this is a very practical step-by-step strategy to make development more sustainable, because unsustainable strategies are easy to identify. When we leave this room, we switch off the light. We can turn off a tap. We can plant a tree. And we can do this at the personal, at the level of companies, cities, and eventually the global level. For example, in companies, you have corporate social responsibility, sustainability accounting, triple bottom line, and so on. Now, the second core concept is called harmonizing the sustainable development triangle to balance and integrate. Clearly, we need economic prosperity if we want to raise the poor out of poverty, but we also need to protect the environment to reduce pollution. And we need the social side for empowerment and inclusion, particularly of the poor. And if you take any particular topic like poverty, inequality, sustainability, it has all three dimensions, and that is the way we have to balance and harmonize. For example, we need to avoid investment imbalance. If we have materialistic growth, private profit-driven extreme market forces, corruption and monopolies and so on, this can destroy social and natural capital. The economic built capital is so big. So young people can help to reduce harm to social and natural capital. They must work to protect especially social capital through social media and other means, because this is the mainly undervalued invisible resource. It is the glue that binds society together with values, ethics, and culture and other aspects. The third core concept is in our own minds. We have to transcend boundaries through innovation and fresh ideas. In particular, I would focus on values because we have to replace unsustainable, unethical values, particularly starting with greed, selfishness, and so on. If you look at how wrong values drive unsustainable development, these values like greed, selfishness, violence, and corruption have led to a model of economic maldevelopment. You have unsustainable debt driving growth, waste, overconsumption by the rich, extreme market forces, poverty, and inequality. And that has led to the environmental debt. We have pollution, depletion of natural resources, and so on. We have to break the unsustainable cycle because there is less space for sustainable development with this model. We also need to transcend disciplines to address sustainable development issues. If you look on the left side, you see many issues like social justice and so on, and all the way to biological and physical resources. And on the right, you have disciplines starting with philosophy. You have law, economics, medicine, engineering, physics, mathematics. So we need a transdisciplinary approach to deal with all these complex topics. We also need to transcend stakeholder boundaries. In particular, young people can help to get civil society and business to work with government, to push governments to do the right thing. And one thing we need to do is to avoid, for example, stakeholder imbalance. If business is very big, it will control the government. It can also control civil society, and it will certainly harm nature. So we have to be careful about the balance of the three stakeholders. The fourth core concept is very simple. It's just implementation, implementation, implementation. There are many case studies and best practice examples of Sustainomics tools, and I can explain them to you if you contact me later. Thank you. That's my answer to you.
それでは次にですね、ミレニアム消費目標に関してお聞きしたいと思います。で、ムナシンゲ教授はですね、2010年に国連でミレニアム消費目標というものを提唱されました。そしてそれはその後、いわゆる SDGs の中の責任ある消費と 投資のですね非常に重要なですね構成要素となったわけです。消費者がですねこのミレニアム消費目標に沿ってですね、例えば価格の高い財を受け入れるということになったりですね、それから企業がですね、生産方法を効率的に資源を効率的に利用するというものを取るようになった時にですね、これはコストがかかる可能性というのがあるわけですけれども、こうした消費者や企業がですね少しお金を払っても受け入れるというようなことを促進するためにはどのようなことが必要なのかということを教えていただければと思います。
Again, a difficult question, but let me see how we can answer this. How can BIGG bring about sustainable consumption and production to have sustainable markets? Well, I think institutionally, a sustainable society will start with a small group of pioneering consumers and producers. You put them together, and eventually you will have it spreading throughout society and sustainable behavior, so that government, civil society, and business work together. You have traditional markets like organic markets and other things for old people, but particularly online markets for youth, because younger people do everything online. And after COVID, digital technology is going to go even faster. I am working with an international group who are developing sustainable markets internationally. They are nowhere near the size of Amazon, but they have a lot of clients who are looking for sustainable products. And this is the kind of interaction that we want to promote to change values and change behaviors. And advertising and other things will also have to come, not to get people to buy more of a product, but buy sustainably and buy carefully. If you look at, for example, food production, it's shown in this slide, you see 1/3 of world food production is lost or wasted, while 800 million people are starving. For example, in the US, about half the food that goes into a home is wasted. In Europe, it's more like 30%. This is affluent homes. If you look at the top slide, you see that this Western family can have the same nice lifestyle with plenty of food and other things, but with less packaging, less waste of food. And this is the BIGG path of transformation, which is coming down on consumption, maybe even saving money, but maintaining a very good quality of life. So that sustainability transformation need not be expensive. Does not mean you have to spend more. Similarly, the bottom slide shows a poor family in Africa where you have to now not reduce their consumption, you have to actually increase along the BIGG path, because it is unsustainable and unethical for them to live in poverty. And you have SDG 1 and 6, poverty and inequality, telling you that. Now, I want to also tell you this is not all just about rich and poor countries. This is rich and poor living in the same country. This is a picture of a home of an Indian multi-billionaire. Just 5 people in the family, $70 million it costs, 27 floors, it has helipads, movie theaters, and so 3 floors of hanging gardens, 600 staff. So this is high-end consumption, which can be substantially reduced in terms of material use. without interfering at all with the quality of life. And this building has fabulous view of the ocean, but it also overlooks the Mumbai slums, which is shown in the bottom picture. Over 1 million people live, each having approximately 1.5 square meters per person, one toilet for 1,500 people, and so on. So this kind of inequality also has to be reduced, again, through the BIGG path. Also, I told you that it is not only pricing, but also other value changing and nudging behaviors. In 2012, at the Rio +20 World Summit, I got tired of listening to the world leaders making promises. I went to the beach with a group of musicians, an international consortium, and we formed an organization called Sustainomics. Please visit our Facebook page and other things. We are creating the music of sustainability, trying to reach hundreds of millions of young people who are going to rock concerts and other things. And we are trying to appeal to the heart, to nudge them to change their values, because this kind of intellectual discourse that we are having today, Professor, is wonderful, but it only reaches 0.0001% of the world's population. So we can use music and song and other methods besides pricing and economic tools to spread the message of BIGG. And now we come to sustainable production. These are some ideas from workshops that I have done for CEOs and senior managers of top multinationals. 3 points have emerged. They all accept that sustainability and triple bottom line is the wave of the future. They accept that resource use efficiency is a short-run win-win, because actually you lower your costs and you also reduce the environmental resource use, for example, through energy conservation. So the resource use efficiency is not necessarily always leading to higher costs. Third aspect, which is the long run, that we have to go to more ethical values, not only in business, but also in consumption. And you can see the list of companies that I've worked with. For example, BASF, which is the world's leader in chemicals, supermarkets, Tesco, Unilever. I worked with OPEC, Petrobras, Sime Darby, which is plantations, Novozymes, biotech, and mining companies, industry, even wine producers. All of them, we hope, can become part of the solution, not part of the problem, and not necessarily always driving prices higher, but also maintaining a reasonable price level, but raising scarce environmental resource prices higher, of course. Thank you, Professor.
それでは最後に、Munasinghe教授から世界の若者に向けて、ぜひ何かメッセージをお願いできればと思います。
Let me show you a few slides because it's much easier. First is we need to watch out for many unknown and known surprises, that we'll need new solutions. Certainly climate change, which is a risk multiplier. But we can have pandemics, environmental crises, resource shortages. We can have social unrest, terrorism, conflicts, economic crises, technological disruption. Young people will have a key role. You have to do research and innovation to build resilience against shocks, to help us survive in a dynamically changing world. Just quick example, 12 economically disruptive technologies. like mobile internet, artificial intelligence, IoT, cloud technology, and so on. The first 8 are all to do with digital technology. It's a very key area which is accelerating after COVID. There are other things like genomics and energy storage and so on. But these are all potentially disruptive, but many other things are also emerging. I also have some personal advice, which I follow. We have to harmonize ourselves before we harmonize the planet Earth. This slide you show that you have the domain of the mind, where you have income, your job satisfaction, career, and so on. But you also want to keep your health, your fitness. For example, I do Tai Chi every day for half an hour, and I do meditation in the morning for mind-body integration. And don't forget the third aspect, which is the social side. You have your family, your friends, a community, the whole world. You need to balance these 3 aspects to have a balanced personal sustainability triangle, to be a happy, contented person. And especially after post-COVID, we have to rebuild unbalanced and shattered lives. I would also say that there's an optimistic message for youth in Japan and the whole world. This is not pessimistic. We have multiple global problems with serious challenges. Pandemics, economic crisis, poverty, climate change, and so on. But these problems can be solved together, provided we begin now, although the issues are complex. Sustainomics is one way to take the step forward, balanced, inclusive, green growth. So we want to transform a risky business as usual scenario into a safer future. And for this, we need to change governance systems at every level. We have to deal with multiple crises in an integrated way. And we have to manage, particularly the post-COVID world, to support sustainable development. We have to get business and civil society to work with government. And particularly, I encourage young people again to play a key role in devising new 21st century BIGG paths for sustainable development in Japan and the world. And also remember our past. Here's an ancient blessing from Sri Lanka. It says, may the rains come in time, which is environment. May the harvest be bountiful, which is the economy. May the people be happy and contented. May the king be righteous, which is the social side. So even in ancient times, my ancestors knew about the sustainability triangle. Today, I'm trying to rediscover this old truth. Just to end, I come from the Munasinghe Institute for Development. We have scholarships, training, and awards, applied research, engagement in public policy. We have more publications and further information. So do contact me if you want to progress. Stuti, domo arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much.